Buzz, this is your story that you broke last night, that Curtis Scott was in a fight with John Bateman. This was over a year ago. It was dealt with in-house at the Raiders. Now, Curtis is clearly upset over Canberra's decision to sack him, and he took to his social media to say that he feels like he's lost everything and that he can't understand why Canberra have continued to kick him while he's down and leak in-house information that was dealt with over a year ago regarding a former player, that former player being John Bateman. Curtis described it as a low act and proves that they have no real care for player welfare. Buzz, why did Canberra tell you about the fight with John Bateman?
It's very, very important to point out that story did not come from the Canberra Raiders. And I actually had it confirmed from someone in the Curtis Scott camp when I heard a rumour about it. So he's on the wrong track there. I will say, though, I think Canberra, and I indicated this last night, have been too hasty in tearing up his contract, in that he deserves his day in court later this month to fight the assault charges from the Canberra nightclub.
Why do you have to wait for a conviction in court to decide a guy is bad for your culture at your football club?
Well, because, Kenty, if he gets off, we've got to look at Australia Day and forget the fact he was arrested, because he was wrongfully arrested. A court has found that.
That was a technicality.
So all we
He got off because they handcuffed him before they arrested him.
Yeah.
There's a technicality he got off.
I can't defend his prior behaviour.
But look, let's forget whether the legalities of this from a legal point of view. Yeah, we live in a legal system, not a justice system. Okay, that's the reality of it. So legally, he got off that case. Legally, he's got another case to fight. But that's irrelevant to what's going on in your football club and whether he's a good influence on the club or a bad influence on the club, whether he's a good person to have in your club or a bad person in your club, or someone that's, he could be a good bloke, but he might be just not the right fit for the Raiders. And they might just say, you know what, we've given this guy, we gave him Australia Day, we've given him the nightclub incident, he's had this one here, how many others do we not know about that's going on there? Is he a good bloke to have in team meetings? Is he a good bloke to have around the group? Is he a good bloke that accepts criticism, goes out and works harder? Or does he bitch and moan and complain? The mental health card gets played a lot these days.
I think
we all go, can't address that.
I think you're being very, very unfair raising the mental health card, because I've explained to you, I spoke to him last weekend, and I think he's very genuine in the battles that he's fighting at the moment. And I thought it was brave that he stuck his hand up and admitted he was seeking treatment.
Everyone's got mental health problems these days.
But from a behaviour point of view, Buzz, it's welcome to the real world. Like, you might say the charges were thrown out for the Australia Day incident, but that doesn't excuse his behaviour of being an NRL player and getting himself so drunk that he fell asleep under a tree in the middle of Sydney.
And then he's gone. The coppers.
You know he has no police conviction. Nothing.
But
yes, that's the truth.
But then he's brought the club into disrepute. That's
on
what
a second occasion,
it doesn't mean he's guilty. It says it's happened. The headlines are damaging.
I think you guys, if you're in my position, had spoken to him, you'd heard his voice, and it was quite emotional. It really was, and that's why I'm defending him. That's why I think they could have waited.
Over the course of time, the Canberra Raiders, if we go through the history of the decisions like this that they have made previously, Todd Carney, Josh Dugan and Blake Ferguson. They're the three players over time the club has sacked. So it's not as if they make rash decisions on a regular basis. In this instance, Curtis has given them a lot of issues since he arrived at the club. If you go back through Curtis's time, he's people at Cronulla will say that, he got out of Cronulla and went to Melbourne for the betterment of him. He went to Melbourne, he had some issues down there. He's gone to Canberra, that's continued. This is a professional sport. When he had his blue with Bateman, he was out for, was it 3 weeks? $7,000 a week he gets paid. You know what, mate? Most people don't get that opportunity in life.
And the other thing is, we all rave about the Melbourne culture. They had him in the joint for 5 minutes and were happy to let him go.
When you say they were happy to let him go, I think you'll find he wanted to move closer to home, and Canberra was a 2-hour drive instead of a lot.
I think that's what the PR was.
Yeah.
Curtis Scott also alluded that this is not the first time that this has happened on the mental health to a player at the Raiders that has come out about their mental health struggle. He's obviously talking about George Williams there, and that's a really serious allegation to level at a club to say that you have no interest in player welfare. How have the Raiders responded to that?
Well, I don't talk to Don Furner. I find him to be a volatile human being, Kenty.
The fact is, the Raiders have vowed to continue supporting him now that they've sacked him, as far as his welfare. They did the same to George Williams. They continue to pay for his counselling and all the rest of it.
Which I think clubs should.
Well, yeah, of course they should.
You should look after your players.
Of course you should. But by the same token, to come out and say they have no concern for his mental welfare because he wrongly alleges that it was the Raiders that leaked it to Buzz.
Yeah.
Because there are people who knew the story.
There were 60 people at the club last year, everyone who knew the story.
In respect to Don
and
Furner,
people outside
Buzz,
the club who knew it, Buzz.
You might not get on with him and he might not get on with you, but as a person and his integrity is unquestionable, Buzz, over he's longest-serving CEO in the game right now.
Yeah, well, my blue with him 20 years
he's a
ago,
decent
Paul,
man.
My blue with him 20 years ago was a very, very heated phone call. And I'm thinking, well, if that's the last time I spoke to him and he behaved in that manner over an issue, nothing as serious as this, I started thinking to myself, is he too hostile on these players?
Well, see, I like a man that can hold a grudge, Buzz.
Do you?
I do.
I reckon Donny can hold his hands up too.
Yeah, well, I'm not going there, Cross. I'm just telling you what.
Look, we've all got people in the game we've had blues with and do and don't talk to. That rugby league's a hostile game.
I don't believe it.
It's like we're Afghanistan.
Well, I'm just saying I found him to be a volatile human being.
20 years ago, I was volatile too, Buzz, towards you.
You were the crankiest man on the planet.
But the fact is, I think it's an easy sympathy card to play. Mental health, they didn't look after me. They have vowed to continue helping him. If the club didn't leak it, did the club get an apology from Curtis Scott? If the club didn't leak it, and they continue to pay for his counselling or whatever else he gets there in that mental health area.
Well, no, I think he's still looking at legal options for unfair dismissal. He still had 2 years to go on his contract. So, no, I don't think he's interested in an apology.
Yeah, Kenty, if he wins his court case, if he's found not guilty like Australia Day, he will have a case for wrongful dismissal.
He'll no doubt have a case. His lawyer will be telling him the whole way.
That's why I would have waited.
Well, I think the Raiders can raise a valid case that he brought their club into disrepute. He embarrassed the club. He's created negative headlines. He was in a nightclub in a fight. The reasons that I've had offered...
You weren't inside the nightclub. No, you don't know the circumstances.
Well, you though, so you can't take down my side of the story.
Did he say it was self-defence?
He's claiming it was self-defence.
Right, I need to be careful because a lot of the stuff that was said in a bit of research I did around that interview last weekend would have been contempt of court if we'd printed it. There are circumstances. He will plead self-defence and provocation. So it'll be a really, really interesting court case in a couple of weeks.
Well, it's obviously got all the players talking. Josh Hodgson addressed Curtis Scott's termination this morning.
Really disappointing. Curtis is such a good kid. We've all just been trying to check in on him, make sure he's okay. It was only the day before he wrote it was really touching personal article that I thought he wrote into his struggles and what he's had recently. Well, I'm sure he probably feels that way if that's what he's wrote, because you got to understand Scott has been on his own for a long time back in Canberra and away in Sydney, and we've been up here, so he really feels isolated, and I guess that's why so many of us have been reaching out to him. So I can't comment for Curtis. All I can, as I said, I'm sorry, it's a boring story and I can't give you an headline, but I'm just trying to make sure we look after me mate, as we all are. There's a lot of us here that care about Scotty, and as I touched on earlier, if you want a good kid and a good person, then we won't be doing as much as we can for him. So first and foremost, front of our minds and making sure he's just okay, especially as I touched on reading that story the day before he got sacked. It was I think people need to tread very, very carefully before writing pieces on him until they actually know everything and they know what he's like as a bloke, because someone's already put that he's in that kind of headspace. It's a very delicate subject. I'd love to give you an headline, but I'm not on the board. So that's, for me as a playing group, I'm just worried about Scotty, making sure he's all right. If it's I'm not going to step outside my lane. I'm not part of the board. I'm not there who makes the decisions at the top. I'm a rugby league player. That's their job to do. So I'm not here to question them. So.
Really strong support there from Josh Hodgson. He couldn't have been any clearer. He backs Curtis Scott. He urges everyone to tread very carefully when talking about this situation and the grounds for the Canberra Raiders' decision to part ways with him, and the fact that he still believes that Curtis is a wonderful man and wishes him all the best. It has been such a difficult year for the Raiders. Do you think that having the players so supportive of someone who's just been sacked is divisive at this point and has probably been tricky to navigate?
No, that's the way players are. Well done to Hodgson supporting his teammate.
Guys,
that's what they do.
Yeah, well done to the players, because there were a few guys who felt a bit like that when George Williams left. He was a popular member of the team. And I was really worried they'd fall apart, Canberra. But they've had a red-hot go since, and they've been in there, they're still live.
Josh Hodgson came out and did an interview with me at the time when George Williams left.
He
And he's an honourable man. He's a great teammate.
Yeah.
He's a leader within that group. As Kenty said, you would expect nothing less. But the club has a different obligation, and their obligation is to look after the club.
Yeah.
It goes ahead of any individual. And in this instance, I'm sure they've made a decision for what they believe is best for the club. The players will always back their mate.
I will make this point. Jack Whiten is a Dalian Player of the Year. Jack Whiten was on a far more serious assault charge last year. Got 10 weeks suspension or whenever it was the year before. They stood by him.
Jack's probably got a few runs on the board too. He's been there since he was 16.
Wouldn't that also tell you,
yeah.
though, Buzz, that they treat each case on its merits? And wouldn't that indicate that there's probably more to this then? The fact that they stood by Whiten and this young man, admittedly...
You can look at it both ways, Kenny. You can look at one's a more valuable player than the other two.
Well, you could do that, but
Yeah.
you look how valuable George Williams was to the club, and in the end they had to let him go.
Sure.
We'd
Like,
hate to
you
think
look-
players are disposable.
Todd Carney,
well.
Ferguson, Dugan, they were all young and hot and raring to go like this guy was. Like, they don't do it glibly, just say, OK, you're out the door. Like, clubs don't like letting talent go.
And I know Ricky's looked back on those ones that he did let go, and he said we made a line in the sand, what we were going to tolerate as a club, and then they go on and be champions at other clubs, and it hurts to see that we made that tough choice.
Yeah, but...
And they didn't get the services
But
for
look,
them.
if there's one thing, and again, we all rave about the Melbourne Storm. If there's one thing the Storm do, is they and they're quite open, they recruit character first and talent second. And that's what... Some clubs don't have the fortitude to do that. They sit there and they get nervous about the losses, and they go out and they recruit talent, and they hope the talent, and they just accept the problems that come with the talent. And the Raiders are transitioning from a club that was in that period at one point, recruiting talent first, to a club that's going character first. That's the way they're going.
Craig Bellamy did an interview on 100% Footy last night, and he spoke about that exact thing, that the players have an obligation. They know that they're NRL players, they're representing the Melbourne Storm, and the reason they have to behave is because they're doing the right thing by the club. Yeah, but that's Melbourne's standards.
Well, the good clubs have that standard. The Sydney Roosters have that standard. I think you'll find before he went to Penrith, Tavita Pangai Jr. was offered to them for the back end and without Collins and all those players. But Trent Robinson, I believe, was of the opinion he mightn't be the Roosters' fit. Wasn't being nasty about it, but just didn't think he'd be their fit.